Hello and welcome, everyone. I hope you're doing well on this Friday morning and the weather is not too disruptive. It's exciting to be here with you. My name is Nicholas Kelly. I'm looking forward to talking to you today about AI in education, and it is a pleasure to be doing this with Lourdes College. And we are going live on 3 different platforms today. So we're on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube Live. So feel free during the session today. I prefer these sessions to be more interactive. So if you have questions, I'm not going to wait to the end. If you have questions as we're going through the content today, feel free to put it in the chat. And when appropriate, I will answer it. So it's within the context as we go through it, because you might forget questions that you have as we go on through the content today. So we'll just give a couple minutes for people to join. Be cool to hear from anyone where you're from. If in the chats you can just let me know where you're from, and we'll see how many people we have. Okay, so we have absolutely. Mendoza, thank you for that. Good morning, everyone. Praise be Jesus and Mary, now and forever. Love it. Excellent. So where are people from today? I have some guesses. But let's see. Make sure the chat functionality is working as well. So as we go through this, we can answer your questions as we go. Okay. Okay, so what we're talking about today, AI in education, making it simple, socialized, and strategic. And as I said, we're doing this in partnership with Lourdes College, and thank you to Myrna for her partnership. It is an honor and a privilege to be able to partner with you and your incredible organization. And we're looking forward to a bright future. So today's session, we're going to get stuck into some really interesting topics, and we're getting some comments coming in. This is great. So Miguela, you're from the Quality Assurance Office. I love it. And Lourdes College, Philippines. Mendoza, love it. It's great. I'm actually coming out of Taguig today. So I'm local in the Philippines. And we're actually here in person. So we're excited to be here. Okay, and let's get stuck into the content then, folks. And again, reminder, drop your chat in the comments. I'll see it right away. So if you have any questions, happy to address it in the moment. Just in case you weren't aware, I have written 2 books as of today. Delivering Data Analytics, which is the end-to-end approach to delivering analytics and data within the enterprise. And then my second book, which just got released a couple of months ago, is a bestseller in the professional section in Fully Booked, I'm pleased to say, How to Interpret Data, which is the almost exact opposite of my first book. The first book is a very technical book. The second book is a introductory book for people who don't have much exposure to data. How do they start using it and get comfortable with it? And I'm working on my third book, the AI Enhanced Data Team, which is obviously a hot topic these days, but how do you use AI with your existing team and data team? Now, obviously, the topic for today is focused on education, but I want to tell you a little bit about why you should listen to me and why it is important in education. AI, especially in education, is important. And as we go through it today, we'll be talking about a definition of what is AI, as well as how you can get started. So as an educational institution, how you can get started and what my recommendations are. Now, just keep in mind, these are my recommendations. They're not necessarily the exact way you might want to go about rolling things out for yourself, for your own specific situations, but I'm going to give you a general approach today. Okay, so I wanted to just start with some data that we have from the Philippines that is really quite interesting and took me by surprise when I first started looking at this. 63% of Filipino college students already turn to generative AI chatbots such as ChatGPT for coursework. Now, this is coming from the 2025 State of Higher Education report from Business World. Now, that's quite high. So I'm wondering if you all thought, like, did you know this already? Maybe you're completely intimately familiar with this, and maybe you're not. But I found this quite interesting, an eye opener. Basically, AI is already here. Like our students are using it in the Philippines already. Now, whether we like it or not. And I remember when this first started cropping up in the US. So we're actually based in the US. We're in Washington State. We're about an hour south of Seattle. And last year, maybe 2 years ago, we started to see the schools and universities reacting to the introduction of ChatGPT, and particularly students using it to do assignments, which is obviously not ideal. And universities, institutions scrambling to try and figure out, okay, how are we going to react to this? Right? Should we shut it down? Should we use other AI to detect if AI is being used in an assessment? So institutions have been really trying to figure this out fast, right, in a short amount of time. And this one took me by surprise because it's also fairly similar to the number. I think it's 67% of Filipino workers use some form of generative AI in their work. So the numbers are high. The adoption numbers are high in the Philippines, which is good, but there's risk. So let's look at another one. 58% of them are using generative AI for translation, which is obviously a great use. And there's another little variation on that as well. It's like 55% of them use it to help them understand a concept, right? So they're looking at maybe this certainly would have helped me back in the day when I was taking calculus. And to be honest, the lecturer wasn't very good, and most people would sort of switch off. He would write things on the board so fast that all you could do was sit down on your desk and try and, as fast as you can, write down on your paper what he's writing on the board, because he'd just wipe it off and then he'd be on to the next topic. So there was like no real time for understanding concepts, right, in that session. But if I could have had AI back then to help me understand, it would have been great. So we can see being used for translations, being used for explanations, and then for summarizing articles. So that is, imagine a student has to go off and do a bunch of research on a topic. Well, for better or for worse, what they're doing is they're giving ChatGPT or some other AI like Grok a whole corpus of knowledge of research that they really should read themselves, but they're actually giving it to the AI and asking for a summary. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And there's obviously risk around that as well. So part of what I'm going to be talking to you about today as well is some of the risks inherent in using AI, and how we can do it responsibly. How can we do it safely? So one more statistic for you. 20 to 40% of a teacher's weekly tasks can already be automated with existing AI tools. Roughly 13 hours a week that could be redirected to high-impact student work. That's a fascinating number. It's coming out of McKinsey and Company, and it represents a global study that was done, not just in the US, but across the globe. And I would say this is like a pretty realistic number. So imagine as a teacher, a professor, in the academe, that you're able to get 13 hours back a week. That's huge. That's nearly half your work week. It's huge. And you can use that to focus on the really important things, because often, what we end up spending our time on is like the kind of like the paperwork, maybe the more kind of operational work that is part and parcel of being a university. But if we can hand off some of that work so we can spend more time with the students, there's definite advantages to doing that. So fascinating study, right? But there's this opportunity that we can get 13 hours back per teacher and get them more focused on more higher value, higher impact work. So that one's fascinating as well. And a good morning to Mirna. I wanted to say thank you for your partnership. It's very exciting. Great to have you here. And anyone, feel free to drop your comments or questions in the chat as we go through. And we also have Mom Amelia. Good morning. Great to have you here. So we're just going through some of the stats. So this one's very interesting. I think you can get here. I think you can. It doesn't take much to get to this figure of using different AI tools. So I'm going to talk you through how you could potentially get here. But before we do that, we have to understand what is AI. We have to come up with a good definition so that we're all on the same page. And again, feel free to ask any questions as we go through. So I'm not necessarily going to wait till the end for questions. If you see something that's interesting, drop it in here. I'm more than happy to address it as we go, so it's in context. Well, thank you too. Thank you too, Marina. It's an absolute pleasure and honor. So let's define what is AI. We've been hearing lots about it, and everywhere I go, people sort of have a different impression of what it is. So these days, it is mostly people think of AI as something like ChatGPT, a tool where you can type in things and you get an answer. And certainly that is part of AI. But I've broken it down to three broad buckets. Now, there's lots of ways you could do this. You could break it down into lots of different ways, right? But I think these three buckets are interesting. So the one that we're probably mostly familiar with is the ChatGPT type, which I'm categorizing as the create pillar here. So you can create, you can get it to write documents, you can get it to summarize articles, right? So some of those things we talked about. But there's two other types as well. And we need to know the differences between both. AI, when I was growing up, and certainly what I studied in university, so I studied computer science and I took artificial intelligence as one of my electives in the final year. And that AI was more on this, what you would call this predict pillar. And it is the more traditional type of AI where you can hear about data science, machine learning, these sorts of topics. So the last one, ACT, which might be more new to some of us because it's the more recent development in AI, is agentic AI. Now I'm going to talk about what all of these are. So don't worry about the, taking notes or anything like this. I'm gonna detail these out and give us a bit more context for each of those. Cool. So we have some more folks here. Awesome. Great. Let's see. Great to have you here, sister. Pleasure and an honor. And Sir Johan, hopefully I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Hello, everyone. This is Escora here, and thanks for the invites. Hello, it's great to have you here. I'm delighted it's actually working. The technology is working, which is fantastic. And finally, yes, thank you for this. It is a pleasure, Ma'am Natalie, and we are already off to a good start, I think. Okay, so let's agree these are the three broad buckets of AI. So let's go look at what each one is. So the first one, this might be the one you're least familiar with, but it is the one that's been around for the longest time. So when I took AI as an elective, it was about neural networks and machine learning. So that is like the sort of the basis for this green one, the large language models. But think of it as the more technical side of AI. So we can think of it as the helps you see ahead so you can prepare. It's very interesting what you can do, and I'm going to show you an example in a little while, what you can do when you have really good data. Now, the challenge is the blue side here, predict, you need good data, right? So you're going to be using AI to help you forecast and do things, predict the future to a degree based off historical data. You're going to help try and understand what's going to happen in the future. So, but that one's hard, right? But this is the traditional AI. The next one, which is the one we're more familiar with, is termed as generative AI, or large language models, LLMs. And these are the ones we're more familiar with: ChatGPT, Grok, right? The ones where you're typing things in. And these things can help you do a lot, right? They're really, really good. And you don't need to have lots of underlying good data necessarily. It helps, but you don't have to get started. And this helps you write, design, even write computer code for you. There's pros and cons. Some are better than others, but it's really very useful tool. And then the final one is called agentic AI, or autonomous agents. Now think of these, not wanting to get too focused on the movie Terminator, but think of it as a human doing tasks, but it is an AI doing those tasks for you. But obviously, it's in the sort of digital realm, right? So think of it as like it helps you to take next steps. Like imagine a student enrolled, and normally you would have to do maybe some paperwork, maybe some reach out, communicate with some of the staff, various things. Well, that can be done by an AI agent now, right? Assuming you have things set up correctly. But we'll get into some of the details in each of these. But these are the sort of high level ways we should be thinking about AI. So it's not just large language models, basically. And folks, again, feel free to ask questions. So there's like, if you feel like this is going too fast or you want to understand something more, please drop a question in there. Please do. So let's look at a bit more on the predict side. So this first one, which is the more traditional type of AI. So what does it do? So it helps us flag at-risk learners with early warning. So one of the examples I'm going to show you is like a dashboard that uses this sort of traditional type of artificial intelligence. So imagine this is one of like my favorite types of artificial intelligence for education, because it's so powerful. What you could do is, based off historical data. Now, again, there is this caveat that you need to have good historical data. It can look at all your historical data and say, okay, well, I can see there's this type of student from this type of area with this type of score, GPA, or however we're measuring their academic achievement, tends to be at higher risk of dropping out in the first year. And, here are the top 3 reasons why that student would drop out. But here's the actions you could take to reduce that risk. So it's a rather profound use of artificial intelligence. I would argue it's probably the most impactful in terms of being able to take action and basically increase your retention of students. So it's very powerful. It can also help you forecast enrollment and course demand. So there's lots of power here and potential for what you can do. And then it can also recommend personalized study paths. Now, I'm just giving you a list here, folks. Like there's tons of things that you could do. Really, your imagination is the limit on this, but also the limit is your data. So it really depends on what data is available. So cool. Okay, we have Sir Ramon from St. Paul's Institute of Technology. Very good. And we're actually seeing that we're getting some folks from YouTube. This is very exciting. Okay, things are working nicely. So there's no limit to the amount of things you can look at when you're basically, you've got all the data available to you and you can do so much with it. Okay, so there's lots of potential here. Now let's look at this for the create. So what can you do with create and the generative AI large language models? So what does it do? You can draft lesson plans, quizzes, rubrics, right? There's lots of things you can do in a very short amount of time. The risk is it can get it wrong, right? So depending on the type of generative AI you're using, some are better than others. Some require more human oversight than others. So there's ways and means of doing this correctly. You don't want to just dive in and start doing this willy-nilly. You just want to be very careful. You want to be deliberate about it. And you want to have policies in place for how you would use generative AI to help you create course materials. You can also translate and localize content. So, one of those examples that we see a lot, and in that statistic we saw earlier, where students are using it to localize content. So imagine you have built a whole curriculum and you wanted to automatically translate that into, let's say, from Tagalog into Cebuano or some other language or some other dialect. It's going to be pretty good at doing that. And so it's going to be quick. You're going to still need to review it, of course, but the whole corpus of knowledge that's being translated, it's very effective at doing that. So that's one thing where you might see a huge uplift. And finally, we got another one here where you can auto-generate feedback and progress reports. So these are just 3 items that you can do. There's so much more you can do, right? So again, sky's the limit. Whatever is in your typical things you end up creating within your institution is probably fair game for at least consideration. Can we do something with generative AI to make this more efficient and faster with the right oversight and the right governance in place? So the good thing here is, unlike the predict side, you don't necessarily need to have really good data in the back end. Okay, so I'll just give you a little brief story. So we're obviously based in the US. Right now we're here in the Philippines, but we're mainly based in the US. And we have clients, so large enterprise clients, who have been very excited about AI. They want to get into it and they want to start right away. And they want to do some of the more fancy stuff on the predict side. Now, the problem is their data is not very good. So you've probably heard this term, garbage in, garbage out. It's going to work like this. If you give it bad data, it's going to give you bad output. And it can take a lot of effort to get your data in very good shape. So while I highly recommend having a path to this predict side, you should. It's very important. The risk is it's going to take so long to get your data in good shape that you'll end up failing at it. So that's why throughout the course of this session, I'm going to be pushing you towards a little bit more this middle one, create, that this is a good place to start with AI, where you can use it to help build out curriculum and various types of content you need to use, do translations. There's so much you can do with this already that it's quite, there's not much barrier to entry to do this, so it's quite easy to do. Again, caveat with the proper governance and policies in place, right? But we'll get into that. So finally, under the act phase, and I tried to use some coloring from Lourdes here a bit. I know I didn't exactly get the pink right, but I was trying to do my part. So this last one, which is the newer one, agentic AI. Now imagine some of the things that this can do. So some examples. So 24/7 chatbots can handle admissions and help desk queries. And these aren't just like the chatbots of old. If you imagine, right, if you go on to, let's say, Smart Telecom or Globe or, some of their websites where you try and get support and you're talking to a chatbot. That's not going to be the case anymore, right? These agents can appear as humans. And I don't know if you've ever heard of this test called the Turing test, but years ago, it was a test put together by Turing, who was a pioneer in computer science, Alan Turing. And he said, if he was trying to measure, like, let's say, how do you know you're talking to a machine or a human? And he came up with this test that would say, without a doubt, you're talking to a human. And multiple of the different models out there have already surpassed that standard for, is it a human I'm talking to? So many of these bots already can seem like they're human. Now, if you're kind of like used to seeing how they respond and stuff, you'll probably figure it out that, okay, I'm not actually talking to a human, or you could ask them certain questions. But they've come a very long way. And you can auto-enroll students. You can schedule rooms. You can send confirmations. Like, imagine, the room scheduling software, right? That stuff's tough. And trying to schedule let's say there's a cancellation, or you have to, let's say a professor is not well. Um, a lot of these things can now just be done with an agent, right? So it handles this stuff in the back end. It connects to different processes, and um, if anyone wants to talk about this more, just like let me know in the questions, because there's a lot of innovation happening in this area, and there's a lot of time savings to be had here. Not to get too technical with you, but agents can also be used to self-heal data and language management systems. So like if something breaks and you kind of like weren't really aware that it broke, you can have an agent trained to actually fix these things live on the spot. You don't even have to worry about it. This stuff's really powerful, and it's really interesting, and it's come a long way. So let's dig into each of these a little bit more, and why we should care about them. So what's the impact? So if we go over to the predict side, what are some of the typical educational wins we get from this type of AI? So we can get 3 to 15% higher student retention rates, right, if we start using this stuff early and we adopt it early. So imagine like if we can reduce by 10% the number of students dropping out, right? That's huge. It's significant and entirely feasible with this type of AI. We can get tighter resource planning, class sizing. You can reduce all sorts of risks, right? You can also have a lot of time savings. In part, this goes back to that McKinsey and Company study where they said, you can get up to 13 hours back per teacher. In part, this section is responsible for that. So the next, under create, some typical business wins we could have here is teachers save up to, or let's say the equivalent of, or on average, 5.9 hours per week on preparation and administration. So, prepping for your class, prepping for your courses, the upcoming semester, also the administrative overhead of working with paperwork, documents, all the things that need to get done. Grading is a big one. So there's huge upside to actually using the large language models when you use them correctly as appropriate for the role, that you can have huge savings. So, we talked earlier about that 13-hour savings. This one here is where you're going to get a really big chunk of that saving, is almost 6 hours per week on the more repetitive type of tasks that you end up doing as a professor or as a teacher. And we can lower spend on external content creation and editing. Now, this is one of the huge upsides. We've been building analytics courses and data courses for maybe 6 years now, and it's a huge. I mean, you would all know this, right? But it's a huge amount of effort, and the amount of research you have to do, make sure it's up to date, that it is correct and accurate, and that it's relevant to the industry, and that also companies want that knowledge, right, from their students or from graduates coming out of the universities. So there's so many things we have to be aware of when we're building out a curriculum. Recently, we've been using generative AI to help us do the research, and it's a massive time saving in curriculum development, and highly recommend doing it. Now, of course, you need the human oversight. It can make some very obvious mistakes, and it can put things in there where it's like, that's clearly not right. So one thing to be aware of here, it depends on the large language model you're using. So for example, there's ChatGPT, there's Grok, there's Claude, there's a pile. There's a lot of them out there. And what we have to be careful of is also which version of each of those that you're using. So I'm going to give you an example, and forgive me if it's a little bit too technical, right? But I'll give you an example. The free version of ChatGPT uses their 4.0 model, and that one will quite easily make mistakes on content. In other areas, it's very good. However, if you use their 0.3 model, which is a reasoning model, so it kind of thinks like a human to a degree, and you use the research function within that model, it's going to be very accurate. Now, the problem is the 4.0 model, that's the free one. That's the one people end up using the most, right? Whereas you have to pay for the O3 research model. And that's the one that's going to give you some accuracy. So you have to be careful about which models you're using and then what are you using them for. So, but this stuff you would figure out as you're rolling out this within your organization, that it would make more sense to understand, okay, you might end up using 2 or 3 different models depending on what it is you want to do. So hopefully that makes sense. Now, again, folks, please feel free to ask any questions. Okay. The last part of this act, typical business or educational wins we can get out of this. Up to 30% fewer manual handoffs in administration's workflow or admissions workflow. So what does that mean, right? If you can think of, quite often we have to go, let's say I do one task and then I have to hand it over to Jane. Jane does some stuff and then Jane has to hand it over to Mary and so on and so forth, right? And it takes time. When we're using this type of agentic AI, we can automate some of these tasks and handovers and exchanges so that, for example, let's say Jane just finished a update to a curriculum. Okay, she just saved it in a Word doc. An AI agent will detect that and then will automatically notify Mary, hey, Mary, Jane just finished this update. Here's the things that she changed. What do you think? Right? And Mary could just like type it back to the agent. Say, oh, this is great. And I didn't like this. Could you tweak this? Okay. Makes the updates automatically, goes back and notifies Jane. So you can have this interaction going on, facilitated by an AI agent. So that can be very powerful and quite profound. And another win we can see is the round-the-clock support boosts student satisfaction and conversion. So if we're trying to support students, right, we can use agents to help understand what their support request might be. So for example, there was a university we worked with in the US where, much like a call center, the student had previously had some issue around enrolling in a certain module in a course. So that was there in the background. They went onto the university support website and started chatting to an AI agent, and the agent automatically figured, oh, you probably want to talk about that module that you're having a hard time with. How is that going? So instead of the student having to type in the whole history of the chat and what they struggled with in the past, it's now kind of automatic, right? And they can just pick up from where they left off. And then the agent can go help them resolve that without even needing human intervention. Now, folks, I say all of this, but there's been so much excitement around AI to do everything these days, but sometimes you just need human involvement. You just need the human touch, the human interaction. And so while I'm like a very, like, I love AI and I love what it can do, we also cannot forget the humanity that goes into teaching and educating people. So it has its place, but I have been seeing, I would think mostly in the US, I've been seeing this, too much excitement around what it can do, right? So quite often people need to go on a journey, right? And the journey is more important than the destination. And if it's AI bringing them on that journey, well, maybe they're not going to get the experience that they might need to have. I'll say it that way, right? But think about it as sometimes we just prefer to talk to people. And if we're always talking to some sort of AI agent, that might wear thin at some point. So it has its place, but we also have to just be careful where are we gonna deploy it. Okay. If there's any questions, just drop them in the chat. But I wanted to show you an example of that first one. So let's just go quickly back. So under the predict, remember I mentioned there was, you could build a dashboard using historical data and machine learning to predict which students might be at risk. So which ones are at risk of dropping out of a course. And this isn't actual data. I'm showing you an example. And this is AI generated. So you like get a sense of like I use, if I was to share with you actual dashboards from clients, I can't, right? Because it's got client data in there. But what I can do, and it's a huge time saver, massive time saver for me, is I can sketch a dashboard on paper and I can make it somewhat typical of what we end up doing with our projects. I can just sketch it, take a picture of it, and then with ChatGPT or Grok or any other large language model, I can say, generate a realistic image of a dashboard based on this sketch. Now, if I was to actually put it into this level of detail, like actually build a dashboard, it would take me days, right? Now, this took me maybe 15 minutes. So I wanted to give you an example of right, how you can use this stuff, the create section, to build things. And now in this case, we're showing an example of the predict side, okay? But just keep that in mind, right? Just in terms of creating content, there can be huge uplift and huge benefit. So let's see what we're looking at. So this is a dashboard that uses machine learning to forecast which students are at risk. So over here, a little bit of a complicated chart, but it's good for looking at large populations. In this case, a dot is a student, and these are at-risk students that we're looking at. So it's a population of at-risk students. And we can see a lot of them have quite a low GPA score. And we can also see the ones up here. So on the y-axis, this is the risk of leaving or dropping out. So dots that are up here, so let's say this student here, they've got a low GPA and a high risk of dropping out. And we can see what are the reasons. Now, this is showing the reasons for dropout for all the students in this pool. But if you were to click one of these students, you would see the reasons specific to that student. So in general, on the average, our aggregate here, we can see for all of these students at risk, the biggest reason that they might drop out is academic difficulties. The next might be financial issues, personal reasons, health problems, family obligations. And then I can see actually the specific list of students who are at highest risk. So I can see Mark Thomas is a junior, 92% risk of dropping out, has a GPA of 1.8. Now, this is typical of the type of education university type dashboard. These have been around for years. So back when I used to work at Deloitte, this was commonplace. And you can see it's powerful, but this requires very good data. Okay, now it's still AI. It is like the technical textbook definition of artificial intelligence because it's using machine learning. So that one's interesting, but what about like if we look at this in a slightly different way, right? What about business intelligence? We've talked about artificial intelligence and all of these really exciting, cool modern developments, but there is so much to having just good data and just telling what's going on in your institution. So I'm showing you again, this is another AI generated example, but I'm just showing you without using any AI, if you just have good data, what can you do? Right? So you can look at your enrolled students, how many of those are full-time enrolled, what's your retention rate, right? Like how many applicants do you have versus how many are admitted versus how many are enrolled, what's the gender breakdown, course completion rate. I wanted to show you something that was a mistake, but actually the the AI was quite good. Sometimes when you ask it to generate an image for you, it's going to do some funny things. Like for example, it might get, in the pie chart, you might have 56% and 46%. So it adds up to 102%. It can do stuff like that. So that's just one of those things you need to be careful about. But there's value here, right? So just in having good data, without even doing artificial intelligence, there's value here. Now, when I go work with our clients, this is usually where I advise, don't worry about the predict stuff first. If you don't have good business intelligence, you start there. Start there. So remember, on the predict side, this one on the left, don't do any of this until you can do the good business intelligence work. Just have good data, look at the data and tell you what's happened in the past. Don't worry about the future just yet. Until we can really have a good insight into what's going on in the past, that's when we can start to look at using AI for predicting the future. So just a caveat there. Out of all of these three areas, the one on the left is probably the one that's the hardest to do. Okay, so let's just jump back in here and talk about where would you start. So as a learning institution, what should you start to do? Where should you use AI first? Where do you get started? And I've alluded to this already, right? So the predict side, there's a lot of data dependencies. I mentioned a client and I didn't finish the story. The story was actually they're been waiting 2 years to get their data in perfect shape before they start doing this work. And meanwhile, the world is passing them by. Their competitors are passing them by. And they could have been doing other things in parallel, but they decided, no, let's wait and get everything perfect. And well, as we know in life, there's no such thing as perfect, and you'll be waiting. So I've seen a lot of failures around this, trying to get everything perfect here. Rather than start small, just start small, even with like small amounts of data that you can, let's say you have student enrollment data, you're happy about it, it's good. We don't have to wait for like all your other data to be perfect. You can start doing something already. But generally speaking, this one has quite a large barrier to entry. Now, also, while I do recommend AI agents, for many institutions, there'd probably be multiple barriers to entry to doing that. Not that they can't be overcome in a short amount of time. They're not like the barriers you would have with doing predict. Predict is a large effort to get your data in good shape so you can start predicting, forecasting the future. It's a large amount of effort. Whereas on the act side, it probably doesn't take, it depends on the organization, of course, but it's not anywhere near as close or as hard as it is to do the predict side of things. But the beauty of the create or large language models is that there's really not many dependencies on your data. Now, there are dependencies on governance and education, right? We have to make sure that there is a good policy in place around how people are using generative AI, what models are being used, and how you're using it. Now, I got a question about this recently is, well, if we're going to start using large language models, how can we deploy it and use it internally? So this is one of the great things with the open source movement is there's actually plenty of open source ways that you can run large language models directly on your campus computers, on your own campus servers, that you can control it and also manage the cost. And I'm happy to talk about that one, like what options there are available, but there is plenty. But this is where you want to focus, right? So if you're going to implement want to start using the AI, I suggest you start with the generative AI large language models. There's lots of uplift there. So you see that example of almost 6 hours of time saved. There's lots there. And it's a low hanging fruit, as it were, right? So you're going to get a big bang for your peso with this one. This is the one that probably costs the least and is going to have the biggest impact. So that's like we've talked about how you would do this within using AI to help you as an institution. But what about educating your students on using this? And which pillar would you focus on for maybe building a curriculum around this? which AI would you start to focus on? It's going to be the same. I would focus on this create, which is the large language models generative AI. Probably the way to go here is to start supplementing it per program or per degree or per certificate. Start piloting and testing, see, okay, which ones can we start introducing this to and have a policy around. And maybe then you want to introduce a course or a program around one of these others, like predict and act, right? But you want to start somewhere, and it's going to be this generative AI, and it's going to be how to use it, right? It's like, what's responsible use? How do you govern it? How do you make sure you're getting the right answers? How do you, make sure you're not sharing data that shouldn't be shared, right? All of these things. So I don't know if you heard, was it Panasonic? I can't remember exactly who it was because it was a few years ago. So Panasonic or Samsung, I can't remember. Their employees put in a bunch of private data into ChatGPT, I think it was, and about an upcoming release of a product or something similar. And that made it publicly available. So we just have to be careful. And education, right? If we can educate people on how to use this stuff, that's where we want to start. That's where we want to be. So how would you do this, right? If you were to roll this out, and like, let's say specifically in Lourdes that you wanted to start down this road, and Mirna, I know we've kind of talked about this a bit, and I've given it more thought as well. I think you start with an AI and data literacy program, right? For all the faculty, right? So get everyone up to speed on how to use AI responsibly, the various use cases, the various applications, how to understand how students are using it, how to react to students using it, how to set policies, right? All of these things. And I roughly think it might take you like 12 weeks to implement that. Like, not this would be kind of in a very deliberate, I don't necessarily want to say slow, but it's not a rushed thing, right? It is a very deliberate thing. It takes time. It's big change, right? Like, introducing this sort of technology is a big change, and we just have to be careful about how it gets rolled out. So what I recommend after that is, and this doesn't have to be super formal, but it is like getting the leadership together and figuring out, hey, what's our strategy around this, right? Like, now that you're done your AI and data literacy program, you'll have a better understanding of what it can do. So then we have to start thinking about, okay, what's our strategy? What are we going to do? And this isn't a strategy that should be set in stone. This is a strategy that probably needs to be very flexible and is going to change as the technology changes, as your needs change, your goals change, right? But that's going to be important, right, to get some sort of overall strategy in place. Then, knowing all of that, it'd be good to go after some sort of pilot. And remember, I was recommending you do it in that create pillar. Now, this predict, create, act, these are just terms I came up with. They're not understood in the industry at all. So just keep that in mind. The way you would look at it is generative AI. You would do something with generative AI as a pilot. And whether that is going to be, you're going to use it for correcting coursework, right? That's an example. You could use it for translating content. So that's the sort of, the type of content that I'm suggesting for a pilot, the sort of type of thing you would end up doing. I do see we have a question coming in. So let me just finish this one, and then I'm going to get to that question. There's a few. Okay, and then what I suggest after all of this is when you start to pilot a mini program with students, with some students, with a select group of students, AI literacy program, right? So you can start to say, okay, we're going to have some of our students go through this AI literacy program. It wouldn't be terribly dissimilar to the one you did at the very start, which was 12 weeks for the faculty. This one has obviously be less, it'd be less robust because it wouldn't need to have all the academe relevant content in there. But this one would be more focused on like how do we get the students using AI, generative AI, responsibly. So that's basically what that would be. Okay, so we have a couple of questions. First one, do you think AI is only for tech students, or could it become a must-have skill in education, healthcare, business, and the arts? That's a really good question. 100% it is for everyone. Everyone has to use it. And especially in the global marketplace, this one's like you're either on board with it or you're becoming irrelevant, right, in the global economy. So you want to use it. Doesn't matter what field you're in, right? Like whether it's education, healthcare, the arts, right? There's going to be some uplift you're going to get. There's going to be that. So yes is the answer to that. Question 2 here: if your students could generate personalized learning plans in minutes, would you let AI help you design them? Oh, that's interesting. Okay, I've tried something similar like that in the past, and I will say mixed results. So maybe I would caveat that, would say, with the oversight and careful input from a professor or teacher. So yes, with caveats. I've seen it come up with stuff that would be like, it's questionable. We also just have to be careful around some of this stuff, because we don't want to trust AI too much. Like it can easily subtly manipulate whole populations into and the manipulations can be so subtle, so like unnoticeable, but that we end up with like all of these people educated in some field that didn't really need to be educated in it, but it's to the benefit of some organization or some company. So I would just say, I would say, like, cautiously do it with the careful oversight of a teacher or a professor. Interesting question, though. Thank you for that. Okay, Ma'am Laurelyn, I hope I pronounce your name correctly. Apologize if I don't. What is the safest AI agent we can call to help us in class scheduling, which includes class size, room, and faculty assignments? So, Ma'am Laurelyn, I think this stuff's moving so fast. So I'm going to drop a few names here, and feel free to take note. But a big part of using AI agents is using what's called an orchestration tool, which is basically a way, think of it as a way to like connect different processes together and different tools together. The one I use a lot, I use it a lot because there's an open source version of it that you can just use locally. It's called N8N. So that's the letter N with no space, the number 8, as in the numeral 8, and then no space, the letter N again, N8N. And what this does, it allows you to say, okay, let's say for your example that you have here, which is this is a really great example here. If you took you could get it to pull in a spreadsheet of students. Okay, here's the list of students that are in our course, and then also get it to pull in the list of rooms that exist, and then you're going to pull in the list of courses or classes that are going on, and you can then have it pull in all that data and then connect it to either a model that you can build using AI. And it's crazy how good this stuff has gotten. Like, you don't actually need to learn how to code to do this stuff. A lot of it's drag and drop. So you can say, okay, come up with an optimal plan here based off all of these inputs. And then you can have it output that into some sort of tool. So maybe you use like a scheduling tool, or put it into an Excel spreadsheet, or send it via email to someone, like whatever scenario you needed to do, and you could do it that way. So there's loads of potential with it. So if I was to say there's any problem with agentic AI right now, there's just too many options. And there's But the one I like using is N8N, not least because you can get a free version of it and it can plug into anything. You can get it to plug into ChatGPT. You can get it to plug into Clyde. You can get it to plug into Grok, right? You can get it to build models. Like there's so much you can do with it. Another thing I would mention is Airtable. So it can plug into this tool called Airtable, which allows you to build more sophisticated models. Um, so, and I don't want to go overly technical, but that is a great application for an AI agent. Like that is like probably the perfect application, what you're describing there. So thank you for that. Okay, we have another question. Are our students being prepared to compete in a world where AI fluency is as critical as English fluency? What a question. Yeah, it's going to be. We'll probably look back, 5 years from now, and it'll be just so normal. It'll be like, so our children are 9 and 11, and I have no expectation that university is going to look anything like it does right now when they go to school. Zero expectation. Like if it does look the same, I'd be like, what happened? Like, why is it the same? Because if you think about what it's doing, right? So like imagine what Google did back in the day to knowledge. It democratized knowledge so that anyone, if they had an internet connection, could easily get access to knowledge. The downside, not downside, it's great. You still had to read it and you still had to consume it at a human pace. 5 years from now, if not now, if not in the next year, everyone's going to be looking at their AI as their buddy. They're going to have like an AI buddy who helps them do everything. And their access to knowledge is just going to be fundamentally different to what it is right now. So absolutely, we have to equip students to have AI fluency. I genuinely believe if you don't, they're going to get left behind. Let me give an example. So right now we're hiring people in the Philippines, and one of the things I'm looking at, I'll give an example for marketing. For hiring someone for marketing, if I don't see AI in their resume, I'm not hiring them. I 100% expect that they are using AI to do part of their work. And so what I've noticed is some people are reluctant to say they're using AI because it makes them more efficient, and it seems like they're doing more than they could possibly achieve by themselves, right? But it makes them look efficient. But last year, if you're doing that, fine. Now it's expected you're using AI. You have to use AI. So now, whether our students are being prepared to compete, look, that's a question for us all to answer, I think. But they should be. We should be doing that. Thank you for that question. So I know, if folks, we're going to go over time. I'm fine to go over time. If you want to go over time, I'm going to stick around. I'm going to keep answering these questions. But before I do, let me just finish the content because we're nearly there. My recommendation is start now. Don't wait. Start small. Start to look for somewhere where you can start using this stuff, because there's so much low-hanging fruit for you to start to figure out where you can go. And it's exciting and everything. We have to do it responsibly. But start now. Don't wait. So don't do what that client was, what I said earlier, right? They're still waiting after 2 years to get all their data in the perfect spot. Never going to happen. Start now. So let's just get into the Q&A. But for those of you that have to drop off, I appreciate you. Thank you for your time. Thanks for joining. It's been an honor and a privilege to talk to you all. I'm going to stay on. I'm going to do the Q&A. There's loads of questions to get through, which is awesome. So let's just carry on. So here was the next one. Thanks for posting these, Esther. I appreciate it. So, do we see AI as a threat or as an ally that can free up our faculty's time to focus on mentoring and values formation? I think that's a leadership question, and that is I talked at the CCAP, the Contact Center Association of the Philippines, 2 months ago in Cebu. And this was really the main topic that I was talking about. It was a choice. Do we choose fear or do we choose fulfillment? And I genuinely believe AI, when done right, with the right leadership and the right vision, has the potential to uplift us. It also has the potential to cause a lot of fear. And I think we obviously need to choose that of fulfillment. And that's not easy, right? Because it is easy to sit back and just not do anything and just say, like, um, you know, AI is going to take my job, right? Well, it probably will if we don't upskill ourselves and equip ourselves. Sorry to say, but we can do this in a positive way. Um, I don't know if you've ever seen like the value alignment question around AI, right? Like, is it aligned to humans? What if it becomes self-aware, self-conscious? Is it going to see us as, something that gets in the way? That's not necessary. Like all of that stuff, we can speculate about it, but the stuff we can control and act on is how we react to it. And for me, it's a question of let's focus on. Yeah, I love the way this is framed. Focus on mentoring and values formation. That's framed beautifully. Yes, I would say, like, focus on an ally and something that can benefit and uplift us. And yeah, it's, Amy, what a time to be alive. It's an incredible time to be alive. But it's also very understandable that people are fearful. I totally get it. But it's either be fearful and not take action, right? So these are your options. Or focus on what's being said here, value formation, seeing it as an ally, right? If you do that, it has the potential to make you more productive and more fulfilled, potentially, right? So, like, but it could also not work. But that way, at least focusing on value, you have a path to, maybe a brighter future. Whereas the other one, where you're just letting things happen around you, right? Well, that's probably going to be no upside to that for you. But thank you for the way this is phrased. Really good. Thank you. Beautiful. So, Ma'am Amelia, thank you for this question. How can AI be used to personalize learning and support diverse student needs in the classroom? Yeah. I think this is the type of question, it's like a forward-thinking question. And these are the types of questions we need to be asking ourselves in education. This is like a rethinking our approach type of question. And yes, I don't know if you ever... so when I was growing up, I was into Star Trek. Not so much anymore, but that's how I was growing up. And they had this vision of what education looked like in the future. Well, back then it was in the future. It was entirely personalized, 100% personalized. And so, what is the role of the professor in that situation, right? Right. So if the professor or the teacher is able to free up so much time with AI, it affords them the time to maybe, and this is that question really, can we then have personalized education where the teacher has so much more freed up time that they can provide that mentorship and oversight to support individualized learning tracks per student? I think this is like the exact right question we should be asking ourselves, right? It is, honestly, I don't know how teachers do it. I honestly have no idea. I one time I taught 5 kids Python programming, and for the life of me, most of my time was spent just trying to manage the chaos. Like, that's really where I spent my time. I honestly don't know how teachers do it. I think this is the next frontier for education, is personalized, tailored education, where the teacher has more time to be able to focus on the personalized side, not deliver the personalized side, because that can be done with the AI, but oversee, make sure it is correct and accurate, and then give that mentorship one-on-one to the student. Great question. Thank you for that. Let me just go back to that. This is what we need to be asking ourselves, right? So everything's on the table now. And this type of question puts everything on the table. So thank you for that. Could AI help us shift from content-heavy teaching to more student-centered coaching and critical thinking? Yeah, yeah. So now we can now we have just-in-time knowledge, right? So we don't need to learn everything by rote in some fields. Like for example, let's say a surgeon. Obviously, the surgeon needs to have practiced surgery a lot, but let's say let's say for example, I'm programming. I need to use a certain programming library. Rather than me learning the name of every single library that exists in Python, I can just ask AI, right? So, not that there's much space in my brain, but that this would be a very valid use, right, of like using AI just in time knowledge retrieval, right? Because there's so many fields that can do that. Obviously, some you can't, like the surgery example, but yes. So this is like I think there's a similar type question where everything's on the table. And if we are able to be more student centered and focus on the critical thinking, let's say more classical type of education and the Socratic method, how good would that be? Right? Like, I think the students would be, it's only to their benefit to have that approach. Love this question. Excellent. And Sir Ed, my 2 cents. Not yet, but this partnership gives us the opportunity to change that. AI fluency is no longer optional, it's foundational, regardless of discipline. The sooner we embed it in our teaching, the stronger our students' edge will be. Absolutely. Absolutely. To some degree as well, like the ship has sailed. So it's like Sir Ed is saying here, it's not an option, right? This is happening, and we can sit by and watch it happen, and to a degree become irrelevant in the global market space, at least. And or we can act now, take action right now, because we need to act right now. Appreciate that, Sir Ed. Okay, and we've got lots of questions. This is great. I mean, I can go all day, folks. I love talking about this stuff. So, Ma'am Myrna, thank you for your question. So, what knowledge and skills do teachers need to acquire in order to effectively use AI in the teaching learning process? Great question. So, while it is a relatively new term, that the term AI literacy. Now, this is a term that's a little bit fraught because the term data literacy is basically, well, if someone doesn't know about data and they already know how to use data, are they data illiterate? It's kind of a rude term to use, but it's kind of like the generally accepted term. So let's just say, for want of a better term, we could say AI fluency, maybe. We could say AI fluency might be the way to look at this and say, okay, well, if we have good AI fluency, that's a start. I would start there, right? So, because what that will do is it will help educators understand what's possible. I think sessions like this as well, Ma'am Myrna, like we can do more of these, where it sets up what's feasible, what can be done, what's easy, what's hard to do, the low hanging fruit, some of those things we discussed today. And so, first I would start there. So AI fluency, AI literacy, that sort of thing. And it doesn't have to be super deep. It can be, I think it's probably, let's say 10, 20 hours of content to get to a reasonable level where everyone can start to say, okay, let's figure out what we're going to do, right? So they're equipped with enough knowledge of what's feasible, particularly in education. Now, I would start there. Great. Thank you. Thank you for that question, Mamirna. And also thank you for the opportunity to partner with you and your organization. So next question. Should we let AI co-write our learning modules if it gives us more time to focus on mentoring and religious values formation? Absolutely. Like, I will go back to that caveat. We just have to be careful which model we're using, what their biases are. So a lot of the a lot of the models out there, just keep this in mind. A lot of the models out there may not be, uh, let's say, Christ-centered, or may not be share the same values as we share. So I would say you can let it co-write your learning modules, but what we've observed over the last couple of years when you're writing this is be very careful and deliberate about the prompt that you write when you're asking it to do something. So you have to set it up, right? So you would say, we are a Christ-centered organization. These are our values. Help us write a, curriculum, our program, our content, right? So then I would put it that way. Great. And Sir Ed, I believe it's only a threat if we ignore it. But when used well, AI becomes a powerful ally, taking care of repetitive tasks so we can do more of what truly matters, shaping minds, not just managing workloads. I love that. I love that. Thank you, Sir Ed. Wow, we have a lot of questions. Okay. What role can a college like Lourdes play in shaping the ethical and values-driven use of AI? I would say be a leader in it. Like you have an opportunity to accelerate. So the universities that started down this road, let's say 1 or 2 years ago, have witnessed immense change in AI. And AI agents kind of really weren't a thing. Even a year ago, yeah, they were around, but like the tools weren't really there like they are now. So because it moves so fast, if you went into it now wholeheartedly, I think you could be a leader in it, certainly in the region. So I think there's huge opportunity there. And, in the leadership position, you get to define what that looks like. Yeah, we'd love to, continue partnering with you and bringing that vision to light. Sir Johan, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. How can Lourdes College effectively integrate artificial intelligence into its academic and administrative systems without incurring additional costs, while ensuring that the integration enhances productivity, learning outcomes, and overall institutional efficiency? I was thinking about this one, Sir Johan. So if you have existing IT infrastructure, so there's an if, okay, there's an if. You could deploy it there using the open source models that are available. They won't be the most recent models. The most recent ones tend to be the ones you have to pay for, but they're probably going to be good enough, at least for a start. So that's where I would suggest is look at the tools that are out there that have open source alternatives. So many of them do, and start there by deploying them on your existing IT infrastructure. Assuming it's there. Now, just keep in mind, it's going to put a load on your systems. Okay, so there's some caveats there. But thank you for that question, and I'm happy to talk about that one more as well. So, Mirna, if the school decides to integrate AI, data analytics, or business intelligence, what topic of content should it be? That's interesting. Okay, so I suppose there's two parts to this. One is the integrating it across all existing courses, and that would probably be more on the large language models or generative AI. So I think that's the one that goes across all courses. Then maybe the next part of this is if you were to build a new curriculum, or if there is an existing tech or computer type curriculum, is that becoming the one where we add on the AI more like in-depth side of it, where you would then include analytics and business intelligence, or do you just create a completely new curriculum? I think I would need to know more about your existing programs that you have to fully answer that. But I think the first part of that is you should use generative AI in all your existing curricula. Like, I think that's a safe bet. The second one is then the more robust, deeper focus on churning out analytics and AI talent is, I mean, I would suspect if you can build a new program, that would probably be the way to go. But if you already have an existing, let's say, IT or our computer science program, then you would just upgrade that one. Thank you. Great question. Is it possible to roll out AI integration without overloading our faculty or budget? I think it is. I think there's a path. We should talk about it, right? So I would just need to understand what's your existing infrastructure like, and because it can get rather compute heavy. So, but I wouldn't say it's not possible within constraints. So, yes, but let's understand the constraints. So we can talk about that one offline. So it's a good question. Okay, how do we avoid the digital divide so AI becomes a social equalizer, not a barrier for our students and communities? I know, and like that's a real challenge, right? Like it is a real challenge. So unless people are on the campus, and just going back directly to that last question, let's say you are using your infrastructure to give students access to AI. Well, the community doesn't, right? I think part of this is that there needs to be some broader partnership with industry to make at least large language models available to the communities, much like internet is accessible to most people. I know there's still people that don't have access to it, but it almost becomes like a fundamental need in order to not fall behind. Yeah, I mean, I that's a big topic. That's a tough one. I don't have a good answer. How can we prepare our non-technical programs, education, nursing school, social sciences, for AI without intimidating faculty, personnel, and students? So, when I talked about that 12-week plan for introducing AI fluency and an AI literacy program, it really actually only takes a few weeks, the actual delivery of the content. I said 12 weeks, anticipating it's a big change. So we have to bring people on that journey. And so I think 3 months is reasonable. And I think that helps you address that challenge of, the non-technical programs, as well as not intimidating faculty. I think 12 months. I might be wrong. You might come back and say, no, Nick, probably 6 months. And I'd be like, yeah, it's probably reasonable too, but we just have to be careful that we don't take too long doing this kind of work because it's moving so fast. So there is going to be some disruption, right? So some people are going to feel uncomfortable, but I feel like 12 weeks is reasonable to at least get people to understand this stuff and how it works and what's feasible. Okay. We are okay. I got one more question. I will take one more question and then we'll call it a wrap, folks. So, what will DDAPH expect from schools like Lourdes College to ensure this AI journey is successful? Okay, if anything, so DDAPH is Delivering Data Analytics Philippines. It's our organization. Okay, let's maybe look at it from a couple of angles. So firstly, we're primarily a consulting firm in the US. So we get to see what's in demand, and our clients tend to be global clients. So we get to see the global demand for what companies need and what talent is expected to be churned out and to be delivered. So we have a pretty reasonable understanding of what universities should be building. Now, but there's also the reality of okay, where are we now? What programs do we have now available? And what's realistic? So trying to weigh all of those things. Look, if you ask me, I want to move super fast. That's me, right? I think there's there's lots of desire on this side that we would want to go as fast as possible, understanding the constraints that exist, understanding the Philippine infrastructure and challenges that exist here. So I get it all. I understand it. We would just have to find ways, and I do feel like, I think this keeps coming up. This can be greatly helped by some sort of industry partnership that's going to help, like either fund or support. Let's say, like for Lourdes, if you had like some sort of data center that was funded by industry, right, that could power all the AI for you, for your students and the community. Like, how amazing would that be? So I think there's something there. Now I know that Sir Ed has a take on this. So we only asked 3 things from Lourdes College, because the rest will help build with you. 1, champion the vision across your departments. 2, activate a small, passionate team to co-lead the rollout. And 3, embrace your role as a trailblazer, the first few schools to lead Christian value-based AI readiness in the region. Love it. There you go. A very, very specific, concise answer. All of that. Love it. Thank you, Sir Ed, for that. So, folks, I think we're good. We got through a lot, and I hope you found that valuable and useful. And we're really excited and looking forward to continuing to partner with Lourdes and finding ways that we can go and help be leaders in this space, and ultimately start seeing students graduating with these skill sets. So I'd love to do more of this with you in the future. Again, I would like to thank Myrna for her partnership and her vision in all of this, and the team. Sir Ed, thank you, and Esther, thank you for all your help. Much appreciated. None of this would work without you. And also, I'm very surprised, truly shocked that all the technology worked, which is great. It's a blessed session. So yes, and thank you, Ma'am Myrna. Thank you very much. Thank you. Greatly appreciate it. And Sir Johan, thank you. Thank you very much. And folks, thank you for all your questions. Very thoughtful questions. And it gives me hope, right? It's like these kinds of, the questions that were coming up were like transformative, right? That they're, you're asking the right things. Absolutely. Great. Yes. Thank you, Sir Ed. And God bless. God bless everyone. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you all. We'll make the recordings available, so we'll send them out later. If you did want to catch up on anything, happy to share the slides as well. We can send those out too. Thank you, everyone. Take care. I'm gonna end the stream now. Thank you all. Thank you, Mamogela. Thank you. Thank you too. Wow. I'll just put up the chat here instead. There's so much chat. Great. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it. Thank you. See you all again soon, I hope. Bye.